Throughout history, there have been incredible structures that make us stop and wonder. Some of these buildings are so grand and mysterious that they seem almost impossible to explain. The Bible talks about several of these constructions: massive ships, towering walls, golden temples, and structures that challenge what we know about history and science. These buildings were not just made of wood, stone, and gold. They carried deeper meanings, messages, and secrets that still puzzle people today. Many of these biblical constructions were built with remarkable precision, even though the people of ancient times had no modern tools or technology. How did they do it? How did Noah build a huge ark that could survive a flood? How did the walls of Jericho fall just from the sound of trumpets? How did Solomon's temple shine with gold in an age when transporting heavy materials was nearly impossible? The answers remain uncertain, and that is what makes these stories so fascinating. Beyond their physical structure, these buildings held great spiritual and symbolic importance. They were not just places of refuge, worship, or ambition. They were signs of faith, divine power, and human determination. Some were built to honor God, while others were constructed in an attempt to challenge Him. Some were destroyed because of disobedience, while others stood as a reminder of God's presence among His people. Even today, scholars, archaeologists, and scientists search for evidence to prove or disprove these stories. Some believe they are myths, while others find clues that suggest they were real. But whether one sees them as history or legend, the mysteries behind these biblical constructions continue to spark curiosity, faith, and debate. Each structure holds a hidden message, waiting to be unraveled. Noah's Ark. The story of Noah's Ark is one of the most well-known events in the Bible. It tells of a time when the world was filled with corruption and violence. People had turned away from God, and as a result, He decided to send a great flood to cleanse the earth. But before doing so, He chose one man, Noah, to build a massive ark, a floating refuge that would save his family and pairs of every animal species. Imagine being in Noah's place. He was given an enormous task: to construct a massive wooden ship without modern tools, machines, or any of the technology we have today. The ark had to be strong enough to survive a worldwide flood, large enough to hold many animals, and well-built to last for months on water. Noah and his family faced years, perhaps decades, of hard labor, cutting wood, shaping beams, and assembling a structure that had never been seen before. The dimensions of the ark, as described in the Bible, were enormous: 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. To put that into perspective, it was nearly the size of a modern cargo ship. Noah had to gather enough food to feed both his family and all the animals for a long period. On top of the physical challenges, Noah also had to endure ridicule and doubt from those around him. Many likely mocked him for building such a huge vessel when there was no sign of rain. Yet, Noah remained faithful and followed God's instructions. For centuries, people have debated whether Noah's Ark was a real historical event or just a symbolic story. Scientists, historians, and archaeologists have searched for evidence that could confirm or disprove the biblical account. Some researchers believe that a great flood did occur in ancient times. Geologists have found evidence of massive flooding in the Mesopotamian region, an area that aligns with where many biblical events took place. Some suggest that this flood could have been the basis for the story of Noah's Ark, passed down through generations. Perhaps the most intriguing part of the search for the Ark is the claim that its remains might still exist. In 1959, a Turkish pilot flying over Mount Ararat, a mountain in present-day Turkey, spotted a strange, ship-like formation. This led to numerous expeditions and studies of the site. Some researchers claim to have found petrified wood and geological formations that resemble a large boat. Others, however, argue that these formations are natural and not the remains of the Ark. Despite ongoing investigations, no conclusive proof has been found to confirm the exact location or existence of Noah's Ark. But whether the Ark itself is ever discovered or not, the story remains a powerful symbol of faith, obedience, and survival in the face of great challenges. 2. The Fall of Jericho. The Fall of Jericho is one of the most extraordinary events recorded in the Bible. It tells the story of a great city with massive walls, so thick and strong that they seemed impossible to break. Jericho was a heavily fortified city, a stronghold that stood in the way of the Israelites as they entered the Promised Land. To human eyes, conquering Jericho seemed impossible. But God had a different plan. Instead of using weapons or siege engines, God instructed the Israelites to do something completely unexpected. For 6 days, they were to march around the city once per day in complete silence. Then, on the 7th day, they were to march around the city 7 times. After the final lap, the priests were to blow their trumpets, and the people were to shout as loudly as they could. According to the Bible, as soon as the trumpets sounded and the people shouted, the walls of Jericho collapsed instantly, allowing the Israelites to rush in and conquer the city. The idea that sound and faith alone could bring down a mighty fortress is astonishing. How could mere trumpets and shouting have such a powerful effect? Was it purely a divine act, or is there a scientific explanation for what happened? For years, archaeologists have studied Jericho to determine whether this event truly happened. Excavations of the ancient city have uncovered surprising findings. In the 1950s, British archaeologist Kathleen Kenyon discovered ruins of a large wall that appeared to have collapsed suddenly. What made this discovery even more remarkable was that the walls seemed to have fallen outward rather than inward. Normally, when a city is invaded, attackers destroy walls by pushing them inward. But in Jericho's case, the destruction pattern suggested that the walls fell outward, just as the biblical account describes. Some researchers propose that an earthquake could have caused the collapse of Jericho's walls. Jericho is located near a seismic fault line, meaning the area is prone to natural tremors. It is possible that, by chance, an earthquake occurred at the exact moment the Israelites were shouting and blowing their trumpets. However, the level of precision required for such an event is difficult to explain naturally. How could the Israelites have known exactly when to act? Could it have been divine intervention? Others have explored the idea that sound waves might have played a role. While it is unlikely that human voices alone could bring down a stone wall, the concept of resonance, where sound vibrations can weaken structures, has been studied in physics. Certain frequencies of sound can cause objects to shake violently, even leading to collapse under the right conditions. Could God have used sound waves in a supernatural way to achieve what science struggles to explain? Regardless of the cause, the fall of Jericho remains one of the most mysterious events in biblical history. Whether through divine power, natural forces, or a combination of both, the sudden collapse of the city's mighty walls continues to intrigue scholars, scientists, and believers alike. Number 3. The Grand Temples. Solomon's temple was one of the most magnificent structures ever built. It was not just a place of worship, but a symbol of God's presence among his people. King David, Solomon's father, had a deep desire to build a house for God, but the task was given to Solomon instead. The temple was to be constructed on Mount Moriah, a sacred site where Abraham had once prepared to sacrifice his son, Isaac. The design of the temple was divinely inspired, with every detail reflecting spiritual significance. The walls were covered in pure gold, making the entire structure shine brilliantly in the sunlight. The temple was built using massive, precisely cut stone blocks that were prepared off-site, ensuring that no sound of hammering or chiseling was heard during construction. This sacred silence was in obedience to God's command. Inside the temple, the most holy place was the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant rested. This inner sanctuary was considered the very dwelling place of God. Only the high priest could enter it, and even then, only once a year on the Day of Atonement. The temple was filled with rich decorations, including intricate carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and flowers, all symbolizing divine beauty and perfection. When Solomon completed the temple, he gathered the people for a great dedication ceremony. As he prayed, something extraordinary happened. A great cloud filled the temple, and fire from heaven consumed the offerings on the altar. This was a clear sign that God had accepted the temple as his dwelling place on earth. The people bowed in worship, overwhelmed by the powerful presence of God. However, despite its splendor, Solomon's temple did not last forever. Due to the unfaithfulness of the Israelites, God allowed the Babylonians to invade Jerusalem in 586 BC. They destroyed the temple, burned its treasures, and took the people into exile. The glorious house of God was reduced to rubble, leaving the Israelites in deep mourning. After 70 years of exile in Babylon, the Israelites were allowed to return to their homeland. Under the leadership of Zerubbabel, they began rebuilding the temple, though it was much smaller and less glorious than Solomon's original structure. The older generation, who had seen Solomon's temple, wept because the new temple lacked the same grandeur. However, the prophet Haggai encouraged them, declaring that this new temple would one day have even greater glory. Centuries later, King Herod the Great undertook a massive renovation and expansion of the Second Temple, turning it into one of the most magnificent religious structures of its time. He doubled the size of the temple courtyard, built impressive walkways, and decorated parts of the temple with white marble and gold, making it shine brilliantly under the sun. Pilgrims from all over the world came to worship at this sacred site. It was in this temple that Jesus taught, performed miracles, and confronted religious leaders. But he also made a shocking prophecy. He declared that not one stone of the temple would be left standing. In 70 AD, his words came true. The Romans, under General Titus, besieged Jerusalem and completely destroyed the temple. According to historical accounts, the fire was so intense that the gold melted and seeped into the cracks of the stone walls. The Roman soldiers tore apart the temple stone by stone to retrieve the gold, leaving nothing but ruins. Today, the Western Wall in Jerusalem is the only remaining part of the Second Temple. It stands as a powerful reminder of the temple's former glory and the deep spiritual longing of the Jewish people. But Jesus introduced a new concept of worship. He declared that God's true dwelling place was no longer in a physical building, but within the hearts of believers. Through his sacrifice, he became the ultimate temple, the place where God meets humanity. This profound shift in understanding changed the course of history, showing that God's presence is not limited to walls of stone, but lives within those who seek him. Number 4. The Tower of Babel. Long ago, after the Great Flood, humanity lived together as one people. They spoke a single language and shared a common culture. As they journeyed eastward, they found a vast plain in the land of Shinar, where they decided to settle. In their unity, they conceived a bold and ambitious plan to build a city with a tower that reached the heavens. Their goal was not just to construct an architectural wonder, but to make a name for themselves. They wanted to prove their greatness, ensuring that they would not be scattered across the earth. Their ambition, however, was not rooted in honoring God, but in glorifying themselves. They sought to build a kingdom independent of divine authority, a society where human strength and wisdom reigned supreme. To accomplish this grand project, they developed advanced construction techniques. Instead of stone, they used baked bricks, and instead of mortar, they used tar to hold the structure together. Their innovation showed their intelligence and determination, but their hearts were driven by pride. As the tower grew taller, their confidence grew stronger. They believed that with enough effort, nothing would be impossible for them. But their ambition did not go unnoticed. God saw their intentions and understood that their unity, though powerful, was leading them away from his plan. He knew that unchecked human pride could bring great destruction. In an act of divine intervention, God decided to stop their plans, not with fire or a mighty storm, but with confusion. He disrupted their language, causing them to speak in different tongues. Suddenly, the workers could no longer understand one another. What had been a well-organized project turned into chaos. Miscommunication led to frustration, and soon the people abandoned the construction altogether. The once unified society was now divided by language barriers. Families and groups who spoke the same language gathered together and migrated to different parts of the world. The dream of building a single, powerful city crumbled, and the great tower was left unfinished. This event had a lasting impact on human civilization. It explains the origins of diverse languages and cultures across the earth. Instead of one great human empire, the world became a collection of nations with unique identities. The Tower of Babel became a symbol of human pride and the consequences of trying to reach heaven on human terms. But even in judgment, God's plan was at work. By scattering humanity, he prevented them from uniting in rebellion and instead set the stage for different civilizations to grow. each carrying its own history and traditions. Thousands of years later, during Pentecost, God reversed the confusion of Babel in a miraculous way. When the Holy Spirit came upon Jesus' followers, they began to speak in different languages, but this time, instead of division, it brought unity. People from various nations understood the message of God's salvation, showing that while human ambition may divide, God's power can unite in ways beyond human understanding. The great biblical constructions, Noah's Ark, the fall of Jericho, Solomon's Temple, the Second Temple, and the Tower of Babel, are more than just ancient stories. They reveal deep mysteries, divine interventions, and humanity's continuous struggle between faith and ambition. Some of these structures were built by obedience to God, bringing salvation and divine presence, while others, like Babel, were driven by pride and ended in confusion. Throughout history, science and archaeology have sought to uncover the truth behind these events, yet their deeper meanings remain timeless. They remind us of the power of faith, the consequences of human pride, and the importance of aligning our goals with divine purpose. The secrets of biblical history continue to inspire, challenge, and reveal new insights. If you're fascinated by these mysteries and want to explore more hidden truths, make sure to subscribe and stay connected. There's much more to uncover, and we'd love for you to be part of the journey.